feminist narratives, gender nation, and resistance in Palestine, and working on 3 different collaborative projects: Living Archives, Third World, Indigenous and Anti-Racist Queer and Feminist Transnational Solidarities, Palestine and the Indivisibility of Justice, and Islamophobia, Gender, Sexuality, and Racism. And her activist work is extensive, but just to say 2 things. She co-founded the Union of Palestinian Women's Associations in North America and the Palestine Solidarity Committee, and she's also co-founder and member of California Scholars for Academic Freedom, and she also serves in one of the founders of the U.S. Campaign for Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel, which I'm very proud to serve as a member of the advisory board myself. Recently, at San Francisco State University, she has been targeted for allegedly consorting with terrorists because of her work in Palestine. Sandra Soto is Associate Professor of Gender Women Studies.
I begin by honoring the indigenous peoples on whose lands we meet today. And I also want to thank Lisa. It's really nice to be organizing back with you, Lisa. She used to have our back at NYU, and so did Robin. I went to NYU. My first class was supposed to be 9/11/2001. Big mistake. But thank you for organizing, and I'm really honored to be part of this group and to be really thinking about what academics should be doing. What academics should be doing. How are we going to be using our knowledge, the knowledge we produce, for social justice, not to destroy humanity. I'm going to, Robin, just make sure you discipline me because. Okay, so this, there are a few things I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about what happened at San Francisco State very briefly, and for people who would like more information, we can discuss it later. I want to talk about how this is part of a history of things, not just separate from other things, and like what's different then about what's going on now, and just give you a little bit of up-to-date where we're at with what's going on. So I begin by thinking that this is, I don't think this is not a new attack. What's happening against us, the academic attack specifically around people who advocate justice for Palestine and justice for and in Palestine. And this is different than being pro-Palestinian, because being pro-Palestinian, you could be pro-anything Palestinian. We are definitely not asking you to be pro-anything Palestinian. We are asking you to be pro-justice for and in Palestine. So there's a big difference between the two, and we can clarify that. But this is part of a history in the United States in particular that goes back to the Palmer raids, that goes back to attacks on anarchists and the deportation of people like Emma Goldman. It goes back to the attack against communists. It goes back to what happened during McCarthyism and the chilling effect that it had. And it continues throughout from the Quentin Crow against Black Panthers, American Indian movement, and other movements. It continues and so on. With us in particular, this is part of something that with the Palestinian people don't know about what's going on sometimes, that this is not something new that happened only after 9/11. The attacks against Palestinian people who speak for justice in and for Palestine has begun a long, long time ago, as long as there has voices started to talk about Palestine. And the aim of the Zionist movement is not even to have a debate, but to silence completely. Because the minute you have a debate, things come out, and people start thinking about it, and they contest the dominant discourse, the hegemonic discourse of that Israel is the beleaguered country that came and made the desert bloom, and it's the land of milk and honey. This is the land for people without the people without the land, and so on and so forth. So it actually undermines this whole thing. So it is very important to make sure that Palestinians don't speak. So even in the 70s, we know about the case of Ziad Abu Ain in Chicago, Sam Ismail in the 80s in New York. In 1986, there was a very important case that I don't know how many people know about it, but it was happened here in Los Angeles 8 case. It was a case of 7 Palestinians and a Kenyan wife of one of them, who were arrested in a raid of 250 INS, FBI, and other security agents. They were handcuffed and shackled. And the next day, I think it was LA Herald that said, war on terrorism hits LA. And this was intended to send a chilling effect. So this is the actual thing that happened. Actually, it didn't send a chilling effect, because what happened the next day is that members of the community, at the beginning the Palestinian community, but then other people joined in, took 3 buses and went down to the prison to support the people who were arrested and incarcerated, because and part of the reason that this particular group was attacked by the government at the time, this had to do, Reagan was in power, he was the president, and his vice president was George Senior Bush. And George Senior Bush had a plan called, it was the Vice President Task Force on Alien, Terrorists, and Undesirables. And the plan called for picking up people, arresting them, dumping them, deporting them, and also, and part of the plan, very interesting, is to build them camps in Oakdale, Louisiana, because Oakdale has desert conditions, and thus, all Arabs come from the desert, so they can. And it was for citizens, from 7 Arab countries and Iran. And to model them again after the concentration camps that were built for the Japanese during the Second World War. And Nightline had interviewed the mayor of Oakdale, and he said, this is really great because we can make more money and so on. This is as the prison industrial complex thoughts and so on were actually becoming more popularized in our communities. People were arrested here and there, but it was one person here, one person there, one person will get deported. And what's going on, for instance, with Rasmiya Oud, and that you're going to be getting brochures, and there is also a list, if you would like to sign for her, is that it is if she doesn't get arrested in the US and she gets deported, she will likely be also arrested and imprisoned in Israel. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But with the LA8 case, the reason that this attack was waged against the Palestinians in particular, they were political activists. And the attack was under something called the McCarran-Walter Act. The McCarran-Walter Act was an act passed in the 1950s during McCarthyism against quote-unquote communists. During the 80s, by the way, after the LA8 were arrested, towards the end of the 80s, Barney Franks of Massachusetts, very liberal, proposed abolishing the McCarran-Walter Act, except the only thing that they kept in place is that communism was taken out, but the PLO was put in its place. So it continued, right? But, and the reason the Palestinians in particular were targeted is because at that point, the Reagan administration wanted to attack something called the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador, CISPES. They had a very hard time attacking CISPES. There had been 250,000 Americans who actually went to Nicaragua to support the Sandinista. There were a lot of people going in the Venceremos Brigade to Cuba. There were people filling the streets against US intervention in El Salvador. And later on, we know that the Reagan administration was selling weapons for the Contra, for Iran-Contra affairs, and so on and so forth. So they wanted to stop the movement. They actually called members of CISPES to go and testify before Congress. But there was a huge outcry. So they backed down and they said, okay, so what can we do? Let's figure out how we can target the weakest link of the movement. When they said all the oppositional movement, who is the weakest link? Is the Palestinian. Why the Palestinians? Part of it is because, as some of you were in the earlier panel, but I can just mention it, not elaborate on it, is because historically the Palestinian movement was not really allowed. Palestine was not allowed in the US peace movement. It was called divisive. There were a lot of Zionists in the peace movement. There isn't, as opposed to what I mentioned, the Vietnam War or Central America, for instance. The US ruling class is unified around that. The Democrats and Republicans compete, and who can be actually more pro-Zionist than the other. So they actually tried to attack the Palestinians, because if they can get rid of the Palestinians, then they can go after the movement one another. And if you remember, Reagan's role was first he got rid of the airline controllers union. He went against the women's movement. He went against one movement after that, and everybody was standing by thinking, oh, it's not going to touch us. And it basically destroyed a lot of the movements and rolled back a lot of the gains people made in the 60s and 70s. And so this is actually really interesting, because the LA8 case continued through Clinton and through Bush, and they only settled in 2008, the last 2 defendants, to actually agree. The US government would stop the lawsuit if the 2 defendants would agree not to ask for passports for citizenship for a very long time. So it's not really a victory, right? So this history has been going on and on, and we also saw after 9/11 the attack on the United Holy Land Foundation, on Professor Samuel Arian in Florida, and so on and so forth. So so this goes back. This is part, the attack against the people who are doing work now with it is the ASA or University of California, Santa Cruz, Lisa Roffel, the San Jose State University, University of California, Berkeley, the scholars at UCLA, the Middle East Center at UCLA, Gabby Peterberg, Sari Maqdisi, Sandra K, Susan Salamovich, and I want to name names because I want us to remember who these people are, because sometimes we tend to kind of forget who is under attack. Or, you know, the people, like for instance, David Shorter, some of you know that, or David Klein at CSU Northridge, or David Lloyd at UC Davis. I mean, it continues. So this is kind of like, it's a club that's growing. But I don't think any of us actually want to be part of this club. We don't want to form a club. We're not really excited. I was very happy to be under the radar. Honestly, I was very happy that they hadn't found me until they found me. Because you can't do it. It's draining. It takes so much energy out of you to have to do this work. But this is, you know, SJP, Nadi Abulhaj at Barnard College, Joseph Mas'ad at Columbia University, James Kilgore at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I mean, it goes on and on and on. We can dig and we see, and it continues. Part of the reason, why is it that Dershowitz, Eliezer, the Simon Wiesenthal, Amcha, speak about that, and they have very strong interest behind them. There is a lot of money. We're actually working, we're part of a group creating a report called The Dirty Money, and we're following the money, and it's following, the report should be like in maybe a few weeks coming out, and it follows the money. Everybody, how they are funded, who is funding them, the relationship with the Raout Institute, which in 2010 in Israel came out with a report saying, they call us the delegitimization network. We are the network that delegitimizes Israel's occupation and colonialism and so on. Yeah, we are. Okay. And they say we have all these alliances with all people who are seeking justice, and thus we need to be stopped. And so they pour tons of money. Israel itself, the Israeli embassy and Israeli consulates around the country are actually pouring tons of money to make this stuff. So we're not talking about a little group like the attack. The attack against, you know, like for instance, what happened with us at San Francisco State. It is not just one woman, Tammy Benjamin, who people tend to say, oh, she's crazy, in order to dismiss her. It's really troubling. Whenever, you know, an Israeli goes and shoots tons of Palestinians, they're always crazy, they're always deranged. But if any one of our communities engages in something, they are terrorists. It runs in their blood. It's genetic. It's almost genetic. Okay? So it's not about one person or another. There is a whole system that's trying to do that. Okay. You see what I'm going to be selective about that. And it has to do with a couple of things. It's because of the success, because of two issues. One is that I mentioned that they do not allow anybody to speak. But the second thing is because we've actually been making inroads and successes. And the inroads are driving them crazy. And what happens when you are making with actually just being able to survive, like what happened in Gaza, just being able to survive, just refusing to allow yourself to be destroyed is unacceptable to colonists and to very vicious. So what did we see during Gaza, for instance? And I will be able to talk about my case later on if you want, because I can't be taking the time of other people. But during Gaza, Israeli universities started offering free tuition to Israeli soldiers who are going to go engage in the massacre. A professor at Bar Ilan University calls for the rape of Palestinian women. The Israelis were protesting in the streets of Tel Aviv, saying we need to celebrate that there is no school in Gaza tomorrow because there are no children left. I mean, this is something that is happening day in and day out, and it's acceptable. It's not being questioned. So I will talk about what the history of it later on, but I just want to say where we're at now. I mean, we have some of the things. Some people think that yes, our president, the president of my university, exonerated me on June 24th, but the attack began on November 18th. An attack on us, or actually us, and I say the College of Ethnic Studies, has begun a long time ago. Tammy Benjamin has an article in 2007 specifically attacking ethnic studies, going back to the Black Student Union and the Third World Liberation Front of 1968, calling them, let's not ask because I wasn't there then, calling them that they were trying to create a kind of studies that is going to undermine the canon. The good studies, basically the Eurocentric settler colonial studies, saying that the United States is the founding fathers, because there was nobody here before, right? The land without people for a people without a land. And so this attack has continued, and they continued it, and the thing that they started it in November 18th was when the students, actually still Students' Council for Intertribal Nations, the Native American students, had been participating in a project for 35 years or so, not themselves, but in the community, and they brought it to campus, and one of the senators said, our heroes always killed colonizers. So their analysis that Edward Said, this is the Edward Said mural at San Francisco State University. Edward Said called Israel colonial. This stanza says our heroes always killed colonizers. Israel is Jewish. Thus, the Union of Palestine students, the student group that organized it, and they did not attack skins at that time, they were attacking the Palestinians. They are calling for the killing of Jews, and I, as a professor, I teach students how to kill Jews. There is so many problems with it, including the fact that saying that Israel represents all Jews, a lot of people know that this is actually not true. Israel does not represent the Jews, does not even represent all the Jews in Israel. And the Israeli government does not do that. And it's even saying that it's actually anti-Semitic. Suppose you're homogenizing the whole people. But the president took until June 24th to come out with a statement to clear me of all wrongdoing. I was accused of anti-Semitism, but then there were 500 Jewish scholars who wrote a statement on my behalf saying this is not true. Selma James, the widow of C.L.R. James, and Sarah Kirshen wrote an article in Jacobins. That they stopped doing that, but then the attack, and the attack, specifically the reason for the attack is that I'm only one faculty member. It's only a program of one. I'm the person and the administrative assistant and the students and the staff and the fundraiser and the community liaison and the advisor to students. No, I'm serious. I teach and there's only one program. We're supposed to start with 3, but 2 lines were taken away by the previous president who was very pro-Israeli, and he got upset with the Palestinian students, so he basically canceled the searches, and then before he retired, he deleted the lines from the budget. So it's one person. So I think they figured that if they get rid of me, then everything falls apart, because we just actually submitted the minor proposal to the Curriculum Review Committee of the university, but they wanted to do it before. They also specifically said that they wanted to stop our collaboration with Palestinian universities, especially Memorandum of Understanding with Al-Najah University, which yesterday all university committee has voted unanimously to pass, which is really, we're very proud of that. And we told them this is the first. So you're going to see a lot of us, because we're coming to study abroad and more MOUs and all, and this is the first in Arab, Muslim, or Palestinian community. They wanted to stop that. They wanted to, so if they get rid of one faculty member, there is nothing. All the stuff that the community has struggled for, and the program came because the community struggled for a very long time. So the president cleared me on June 24th, but a whole year they didn't do anything. In the meantime, I was on sabbatical. I basically lost my sabbatical because I spent it defending myself. This happened with faculty at University of California, Berkeley. It happened with colleagues at San Jose State University. I was unable to apply for full professor. I'm eligible right now because I've been busy doing all the stuff, right? They were trying to implicate me in terrorism, which means Homeland Security can actually come and arrest me on aiding and abetting. So we had to even wait on my statement to get it out, to ask all the lawyers who deal with the Patriot Act, and it keeps changing, right? To make sure that I'm not saying anything inadvertently that will implicate me in terrorism, and thus I'll find them at the door. And where they can't take me to Guantanamo, it's a men's prison. But I mean, what are they going to do? Deport me to Israel? I mean, this is, okay, and they also attacked me of stealing money from the university, misuse of university funds because of the trip we took to Palestine, and some of my colleagues are here in January 2014. And so then when they failed in that, they went to the State Attorney General, the State Attorney of California, and they went to the Controller of the State of California, John Shai. Now they're demanding of him to investigate me. So what the university did, even after I was clear, they conducted 5-year review and audit of my international travel. And when you are singled out as one faculty member, everybody starts thinking there must be something to it. I mean, maybe people don't say it in public, but they will say, or even I was thinking, maybe some Palestinians will say, well, maybe she did lie to the university, but she did it for Palestine, it's okay. But I did not do it for anybody, I just did not do it, period. I believe that it is my right to apply for funds to be able to go and learn and visit and collaborate with Palestinian university and come back and push the mission of the College of Ethnic Studies to produce knowledge for social justice. I mean, I am really convinced of that. I think that's what we should be using public money for. What else are we going to be using public money for, right? So the investigation was ongoing, but none of it was about my receipts, like maybe a receipt was missing or nothing, because they get audited again and again and again and again. It was all about the politics of it. Why is there an MOU with Palestinian universities and so on? So I objected to that. The last thing is that the provost in July, I was supposed to go to Palestine to teach at a sexuality summer school. That was the first time in Arabic that's organized by Al-Qaws. Halim Maaki is here. She was speaking this morning, the executive director. And she revoked it because she revoked it and she went on a trip. And then the following, the State Department came up with travel advisory saying that we're not supposed to be traveling to Israel and the occupied territories because this is dangerous and so on. So she basically tried to cover herself, but we have it documented. And basically, so this week I filed a grievance with the Academic Freedom Committee at the university, saying that they're actually preventing me from doing my job. They're not allowing me to do my job, and I'm going to file a grievance with the union, and I'm also going to go to American Association of University Professors. And it's on a personal level, as I'm sure you know about Stephen's case, and I did not say anything about that because he will talk for himself, but it's very draining on a personal level. It's really important on a bigger movement level because we know that California State University now is going to pass an academic freedom resolution, which is what happened with the College of Ethnic Studies. Is that, and I see a couple of my colleagues are here, but one of the things that the college has historically been very, like supportive of Palestine, like from a distance and so on, but all the stuff that we go through, it's over people's heads because there's so many powers outside that are always intervening to stop us from having an event. Rules keep changing whenever we apply for anything, a room or whatever. And so it's really important to do it for the movement and so on, and I think that's the only way we can get support, and the college really came through. The dean came through, the college website has all these statements, the chair's council in the college came up with a very strong statement. Colleagues are actually really getting engaged, and colleagues are going to be part of this MOU with Al-Najah University, and I think this makes a big difference. This makes a big difference to be among people who have your back, who are going to be working with you. And it makes a big difference for all of us to band together. So I'm adding my voice to my colleagues that if we stand together, we can, this is a cliche in the movement building, but it's really, really important to think about it as also Robin has emphasized. It's not an individual issue. The minute you plan to get engaged outside of the classroom or outside of your own cubicle and engage the real world, from which you draw your career and build your career and you draw your money and get promoted and so on. The minute you do that, that is when the risk begins. And the only way we can actually stop that is to band together. Thank you.